So this is a topic a lot of you have reached out to me on. I am going to talk about my actual IIM Bangalore interview experience. All the questions I was asked, it was a very spicy interview. So I think you will like it. Do listen to it till the end. So just to give some context, this was in the year 2007, many years ago. In February 2007, I walked into my IIM Bangalore interview. I remember, I think it was my dean who was one of the panelists at that point, Shamal Mukherjee, and there was another Professor Dinesh Kumar, who was a professor in quantitative methods. And in terms of my profile, I had just passed out of engineering. It was my first year at work. I was working in Oracle, and we had just finished the group discussion in the morning, and I was the sixth person to be invited in the room. And I still remember when I walked into the room with a massive folder with all my certificates, everything just fell off and everything was on the floor. So that's how my interview started. But in the rest of this discussion, I'll give you the exact questions. It was a very spicy and lively interview, and I think you will enjoy it. But before we start, do click on the bell icon, subscribe to the channel so that the next time I make a video, you come to know about it straight away. So when we started the interview, like I told you, the file actually just fell off with all the papers on the table. I think both the professors just smiled, and they started with a standard question in terms of tell me something about yourself. So I spoke to them about my education, about my job at Oracle at that point, and I was a debater by hobby, so I told them that I'm a debater, and that sort of opened a can of worms. So I remember Shamal Mukherjee, who was Professor Shamal Mukherjee sir, who was the dean at that point, said, "Oh, I see you're a debater. So tell me 3 reasons why I should reject you." So it was a difficult question. It's a very tricky question. So you should also tell me how you would answer this question. Tell me 3 reasons why IIM Bangalore should reject you. So I tried to play safe. I remember I spoke about how if you get someone who's better than me in terms of education, work ethics, you should go with that. To which I think they replied that, isn't that very obvious? If we get somebody better than you, we will obviously go with you. So they pushed me a little further and said, let's start a formal debate. I'm giving you 3 minutes. Your time starts now. The topic is IIM Bangalore should reject Sandeep Das. And let's see how good a debater you are. So then I started off going on the line of, look, my work experience is very technical. I am a developer. I deal with codes. I don't have an understanding of business. And if you get somebody who has an understanding of business, you can go with it. To which I remember Professor Dinesh Kumar replied that, isn't that very obvious? I mean, that's why you are here. We are here to teach you that. So we don't expect you to know business. If you knew business, you wouldn't have come to IIM Bangalore. And this back and forth kept going for some time, at the end of which till I said, so I'm not sure, it's a very difficult question to answer. And both of them smiled, and then we moved to the next part. The next question was, okay, tell us 3 reasons why we should accept you. So I spoke about my strengths. It was a prepared answer. I'm sure when you go into an IIM interview, you should also prepare. And it largely went uncontested. They didn't have any clarifications on that. Then it mysteriously moved into cricket. The whole discussion, and the professors asked me, do you follow cricket? So I said, I follow cricket on an everyday basis. So they asked me, do you understand the history of cricket? So I said, no, sir. So then they asked me, how many did an over always have 6 deliveries, so 6 balls? And I was not sure, but I said, from my knowledge, at some point it had 8 balls. It came down to 6 balls, so 8 deliveries to 6 deliveries. So then he asked me, do you think underarm bowling is legal? So I was thinking about it, and he said, do you know what underarm bowling is? I said, yes. And then I showed him what underarm bowling is. And I then told him about the match where Greg Chappell, I think it was Greg Chappell, who bowled the last ball against New Zealand, was an underarm ball. Then he asked me that there is a reason why underarm bowling is not allowed. There's a scientific reason. What's the reason? So I didn't know that, sir, and I said that pretty openly, that I don't know that. Then the discussion still kept going into cricket and T20. So this is just before the World Cup was going to happen. The 50-over World Cup in West Indies, and also the T20 World Cup was later in South Africa, the one which MS Dhoni won. So he asked me about T20. What do you think about T20 World Cup? I said it's a great marketing franchise. It will open up new sources of revenue. It's an excellent move. And then they provoked me and said, but do you think Test cricket will suffer? And obviously, I know that Shamal Mukherjee, when I read his Facebook profile, so I knew he was a big, passionate fan of Test cricket. So I said, no, both the formats are different. They have different skill sets, and one is a purist version, one is a modern version. Both will survive, and thankfully both have survived as of now. Okay, then it moved to my work in terms of specifically what I do. So he asked me, are you a developer or a coder? So I am a developer. There's a slight technical difference for some of you in the tech world. You might want to be prepared. So are you a developer? Then he asked me exactly what my day looks like. He asked me what's the difference between a grid and a matrix. Now, at that point, I knew the answer. I don't remember the answer as of now, but I did give him the right answer, I think. And then he went on to, have you seen the movie Matrix? Now, I have seen the movie Matrix. I'm a big fan of the franchise, but I said no because that morning the Oscar results had come out. And those days in 2007, we didn't have phones where you could just scroll and see the winners. I didn't want to get into the discussion. So I said, I haven't. Then he asked me, are you a movie buff? I said no, because I didn't want to get into that Oscar discussion about that. Then we went into my college. Then the next set of questions were about my college, where he asked me, what's your favorite subject? I told him data structures. I spoke about a project of mine where I created an assembler. And then he asked me, what's the difference between, I think, assembly language and high level language? I don't know the answer today. I answered it correctly then, I'm assuming. He said, when a letter is coded 6A, what does it mean? Why is data structures your favorite language? And there were some 1 or 2 more questions. Honestly, it's 15 years ago. These were all prepared questions for me because I knew I was going to tell them data structures. But at that point, I think I gave them the right answer. Now, around this time, I felt they were enjoying the conversation. There was a nice vibe to the conversation. He asked me about my mother tongue. He asked me about my percentile. Interestingly, he had the percentile in front of him. He still asked me about the percentile. He asked me about my hobbies. So I told him about my hobbies. I used to play a lot of squash those days. I used to read a lot of books. So he asked me, which books have you read of late? So I told him about, I was reading, I think, Steve Waugh's biography and Rahul Dravid's biography at that point. I was a fan of both of them. So he provoked me a little bit of Rahul Dravid. Why did you read that biography? Don't you think he's too defensive? I think India was going for the 2007 World Cup, and they asked me, why do you think Rahul Dravid is a good captain, etc. A bit of provocation on Rahul Dravid. And the last part of the discussion then moved towards the budget. So the budget was coming out, I think, in a few days' time. So they asked me, if you were the finance minister, what would you do? So obviously we had all prepared for this. I told them about, I would rationalize duties, I would look at exports, imports. It was a prepared answer. Then they suddenly moved into inflation. How do you control inflation? And inflation wasn't a problem at that point. So I said, you reduce the money supply, or you increase the money supply in case you want to accelerate inflation. So he said, who manages the money supply? I told him, the Reserve Bank of India. And mysteriously, the discussion went to milk for no reason. Then he asked me, how do you control the price of milk? So I said, you get more, import more, or you export less. Then he asked me, does India export milk? So I told him, I don't know, sir. He said, take an educated guess. And I thought about it and I said, it's unlikely. Both of them smiled at this point. So the next question was, which country exports the most amount of milk? And the panelists looked at me and said, take an educated guess. I said, India. He said, take another guess. I said, the United States, because agriculture in the US is big. At the end of which, both of them laughed and said, we also don't know. So that's how my interview ended. I think they asked me, do you have any questions for us? And that's how my interview ended. I had a very good vibe when I came out of the interview. I think the professors were very friendly, and I did have a vibe that this might work out. So in terms of takeaways, I have 2 or 3 broad takeaways for you. One, if they're asking you difficult questions, it's actually a good sign. It's a very good sign. That means they're interested in your personality. If they're asking you tricky questions like, why should IIM Bangalore reject Sandeep Das? Give us the reasons. They're actually testing you. Or does India export milk? They don't expect you to know these answers, to be honest. They are just seeing how you will handle the pressure, how you will react. Can you keep that calm demeanor? Is what they're actually testing. So don't fret if you don't know answers. I think I must have said in that room, I don't know 4-5 times. It's completely okay to say I don't know 4-5 times. What you should never say I don't know to is what you have studied and come. So had I said I don't know to some of those questions on data structures, I think that would have looked bad. But I don't know to a lot of other things, underarm bowling, etc. I don't think it was taken badly at all. And finally, with IIM Bangalore specifically, I think interviews are very chilled out. So the professors are very friendly, they're very warm. They ask you tough questions, but they're never disrespectful. So it's a very nice vibe in that discussion room. So I've told you all the questions of my interviews. How would you answer some of them? Drop your answers in the comment section. And before we finish the video, do subscribe to the channel, click on the bell icon. Until next time, take care.